Scott Augenbaum, retired FBI agent, author of The Secret to Cybersecurity, creator of the Cybersecure Mindset. I'm here with my good friend, Mark Evans, who's an active duty police officer. And we're going to have a conversation today just between a retired guy, an active duty guy. And it's all being brought to you by my good friends over at PC Matic and Corey Munson, who's in the background. Mark, introduce yourself. Tell everyone, who are you? What do you do?
So like Scott said, my name is Mark Evans. I am a fraud detective. I work out in Las Vegas. I'm a certified fraud examiner. So I've been a fraud detective for the past almost 6 years. I've been in law enforcement for about 12 years now. I love what I do. I investigate all types of fraud, a little bit of money laundering, embezzlement, check fraud, credit card fraud, identity theft, social engineering, the whole gambit. And I've partnered with other local agencies. I've partnered with other federal agencies. So I had a lot of fun. But what I ended up seeing was there was a lot of there was a bad impact when it came to dealing with fraud. So I co-founded my own business, Fraud Hero. And so with Fraud Hero, we provide comprehensive training for law enforcement, judicial officials, and businesses to help them combat fraud and identify it. And we also do outreach for schools and in churches, so we can arm, the normal person or average person with what they need to fight fraud.
Oh, wow. It's cool. So you're doing both things. So you have your hand in each. So let me ask you, when we come down and we start talking about fraud, how much of your fraud is being committed with the use of some type of technology, either a computer or a phone? In your day-to-day basis, what do you say?
Almost nowadays, almost all of it. I mean, to some degree. So when I say like tech fraud, I mean, I talk about the use of like computers, cell phones, whether it's printing checks, that involves use of a computer or a printer. So I see a lot of that. So fraud or tech, I should say, is involved in almost all of it nowadays to some degree.
Are you considered like the cyber guy in the office? Do they come to you with that? Have you gotten that title?
Yes, I am. So I'm actually the training coordinator. So I do get hit with the title of, hey, we got this big thing, we got this big one. Can you handle this? I've become that person, especially over the last couple of years, where everyone's like, well, what do we have? Mark can handle it. It's simple. If it's small, if it's big, if it's complicated, and they feel like somebody else can't do it, they'll go, hey, I think Mark can handle it. He's got it.
Yeah.
That's because I'm passionate about it. Like to me, fraud is like a puzzle, and I love puzzles. So if I can sit there and try to figure out this and pull on this string and see where it can go, I love doing it. It's fun.
So tell me a little bit, how'd you get your start in law enforcement? What got you in, your foot in the door to take that kind of career?
Well, I honestly, when growing up, I never thought I was going to be a fraud detective. I never thought I was going to be a cop growing up, honestly. The passion kind of came probably right before I started college. And once I started college, I was like, okay, you know what? I wanted to give something back. I was like, what can I do to give back? And what can I do that I love to give back? And I was like, oh, you know what? I can go on fraud. I love dealing with the finances. I love dealing with the puzzles and trying to figure out how a fraud case happens. So I go, this is doing me a route. So from the beginning, I actually started out as a corrections officer. And I did that for 3 years before I went to patrol. And then my goal the entire time was to get to fraud, to be a fraud detective.
Yeah, because you just can't join in, and say, "Hey, I want to be a fraud investigator." Within the
No,
FBI, you get assigned, as a new agent, you get assigned to a field office where you're working a little bit of everything, and then eventually you get an area of specialization. But for you, you had to actually be a beat cop, which included the day-to-days, I'm sure. What was it like to be a beat cop? I was never a beat cop.
so it's interesting. I would say being a beat cop or being on patrol is probably the most dangerous part of a cop life. Like everyone thinks you get to detective, you get to other roles, and it gets more dangerous. I would say no, because when you're in patrol, there's a level of not knowing what's going to happen.
Mhm.
You're going from call to call. You don't know what you're walking into sometimes. You only have limited information. So when you do arrive on a call, it can get very interesting and things can happen in a split second. So I've met a lot of interesting people when I was in patrol because you meet any and everyone. You're the first person on the scene when you're in patrol. So it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of fun though. like I said, when you think about wanting to be a cop, you're like, hey, I want to go chase bad guys. I got to go chase bad guys on foot, in the car, jumping walls and hopping fences and doing the whole thing. So it was a lot of fun. But I said it was also dangerous. I got to meet a lot of good people. I got to help a lot of people. So I enjoyed it.
So let me ask you, what was your thoughts about like the FBI guys and everything, as we sat in our ivory tower and everything? And I have the most ultimate respect, at my first office as an FBI agent back in 95. I'm not going to ask you how old you were in 95 and stuff like that. But, we had 9 FBI agents and we worked in a city of, 500,000, and we worked with all the local cops. I mean, I learned my trade by working with local cops, but there was always that, like, the feds are coming in, the feds are taking these, and I tried my best not to make that. But what was it like for you? And you're still working with them, so I don't want to ask you a loaded question. But what question what came through your mind when you were dealing with the FBI and working cases and that kind of stuff?
Well, one thing was wondering like how they got to where they are. So I know what the FBI process, like you said, you've been through it. So like you just don't get to join the sections you want to go to. If you want to go to white collar, there may be a route you have to take to get to white collar. If you want to go to certain types of or certain places, and it may not be a place you want to be. You may get stuck somewhere in the middle of Kansas. Nothing against Kansas, but I'm just
that was my thing. I was stuck in Syracuse. I was like, what am I going to investigate? Stolen snowmobiles?
Yeah. So, but my experience with working with different agents has been good. I haven't had anything bad going on with working with agents. I know there's a different level of how we do investigations. I think more from the local standpoint, I may feel like we're more in charge of our investigations, whereas there's a little more red tape when you come to the federal side of it. So I think those were some of the differences that I saw. Another thing that I saw was the difference was speaking with people. All right, so let me ask you this, Scott. So what does it take for the FBI to take a case? Like, what's the minimum threshold that you guys look at, or you did during your time to even take a case?
Well, and it's different from every single field office. Back in the day when I was at Syracuse, it was a $10,000 threshold for the United States Attorney's Office to take a case. We didn't work cases unless we had the cooperation of the U.S. Attorney's Office. We worked cases in connection. We didn't bring the U.S. Attorney's Office an already completed case and then ask them to prosecute, just like you guys are always running around, and that's why running huge caseloads. But now today, the threshold is so high that the investigative priorities from the FBI are so incredibly high that, what, I was sitting here the other day and I was talking to one of the local FBI agents who's a friend of mine, because we had a $2 million cryptocurrency pig butchering scam, which we're going to talk about. Now, $2 million scam is a pretty big case for you guys, right?
Oh yeah, that's a huge case for us.
Yeah.
But
so I go over to my guy and I'm like, hey, can you talk to this person? And he's like, listen, we have dozens of these cases. We can't even address them all because we have limited resources. We don't have the availability to go out there and do it. And it's kind of disheartening. And, that was what I dealt with in my entire career, was just having to deal with the situation where I couldn't help people enough. So let me ask you, tell me some of the things that you're seeing, because now you're on the tip of the spear. You are seeing fraud probably more than anyone is. Tell me, what are some of the big fraud cases the reoccurring ones that you're seeing on a regular basis?
I'll say probably the most common one over the past year is social engineering, easily over the recent times. I know imposter scams has been the #1 scam that's going on right now, and I can tell you about every week I'm probably getting a phone call about someone or some business getting a call saying that, hey, someone impersonated our CEO or our director, IT department, and they're walking out with cash. It's not just like it's not the business email compromise that's happening. It's not the vendor problem. It's, hey, someone's walking out because they've been tricked to walk out with cash and deliver it to somebody. So that's been a big one.
Explain that to me. So you're saying that there's so this isn't happening over an email. This is happening where an actual person is
Yeah, so
what?
this is like so we have phishing, which is most commonly for the business email compromise. But then you also have vishing and smishing. Now, vishing is voice phishing, where I'm calling you and I'm using either a deepfake voice or an AI voice clone, or I'm just calling and asking questions. And I'm pretending to be a CEO, and I'm convincing whoever I'm speaking to walk out with cash. It doesn't affect any particular type of business. It affects all businesses across the board. And there are sometimes use combinations of phishing and smishing, which is text phishing. So you may be talking to someone who you believe is your CEO and texting someone who you think is your manager, telling you what to do. And now you're walking out with $3, 4, $5,000 put into a Bitcoin machine, or sometimes you're walking out with hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're delivering it to a fake lawyer. So, so I've seen that's probably the biggest one I've seen over the past year.
So these are local individuals in your area of responsibility, is what you're saying. These are actual, because here's the thing, when I was with the FBI, and I still say it to this day, and I want to go through the truths of cybersecurity, but for us, from the FBI point of view, a lot of the cybercrime subjects are located overseas. They're located over in China. They're located in Russia. They're located in West Africa, Iran, all these foreign countries. And that was really what was hitting my folks.
Mhm.
So you're telling me now we have actual people who are actually showing up and doing these types of frauds.
Yeah, and but like you said, the end person, I believe, is still out of the country. They're still in these other countries of origin that you're used to dealing with, but they've developed such a big network that they now have people who are here working on their behalf, but they're still
Mm,
getting the money in all these other countries. The network with everything, with all the technology we have now, that network has just expanded. It's no
interesting. So you're telling
longer,
me these are the mules that you're kind of getting your hands on, which are
yeah.
the unwitting accomplices and that stuff.
So and sometimes, yeah, sometimes they're unwitting, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they are a part of the network as well. So, and that's been the bigger thing I've been finding out is it's not just the person that they met on Instagram or WhatsApp and they say, "Hey, go do this." It's someone who knows what the end goal is, and they're just participating in it.
So what would be your biggest advice? What's your big takeaway for the businesses when it comes to this on because and let me just ask you another way on these social engineering type things, which is if I hear you correctly, that makes up a majority of your work. What percentage of them could have been prevented?
All of them could have been prevented.
All
With
of
accurate, with all of them, with training, and trusting your gut. A lot of times, the people who were the unwitting participants didn't trust themselves enough, or there was a culture within the business that they felt that there may be some kind of repercussion if they didn't go forward thinking that it was possibly the CEO. And that goes along with training and changing the culture of the business. And so a training session, like I said, for these people wouldn't be just a 20-minute video that they watch once a year. It's not a piece of paper or an email that they got one time and say, "Hey, well, last year we did your training, so you should have known." It has to be consistent over time, for these people to really know what's going on, because you have employee turnover, you have people who forget, and of course they don't deal with these things on a daily basis. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing. And once it went to a bigger level, that's probably where you started seeing it, um, at your level with the FBI. Is okay, it's gotten to the point where they're getting money overseas. It's now coming back to you and like, okay, now I have this case, one of your dozens of cases that you're probably working.
Eh, Listen, during my decades with the FBI, and I supervised a squad. So for me, the whole big thing was, how did I get involved in cybercrime? I was the only agent in the office who had a home computer back in '97. So I became that guy in the office. It was not a cool, fun, sexy job to have. And this is when the FBI, we were focusing on critical infrastructure protection back in '98. 99 or so, cyber takes a very, very sinister twist where all of a sudden we start seeing e-commerce, we start seeing credit card fraud. 2002, the FBI forms a cyber division at FBI headquarters after the events of September 11th, making cybercrime the #3 priority. And it was because we realized that adversaries overseas had the ability to disrupt the infrastructure. So I get to Nashville in 2004 as a supervisor of the FBI cybercrime squad, and 90% of my work is child exploitation. We're in the infancy of cybercrime cases. So I'm going out, I'm meeting with businesses, I'm talking to them. Well, I'm working with my local cops because I'm big into task forces. And we formed the cyber task force with the FBI, with the Franklin Police Department, with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, with the Secret Service, because there's limited resources. And during that time, for a decade, I was dealing with victims. And every time I dealt with a victim, I learned new information that I was sharing. And that was probably in about 2016 when I thought it couldn't get any worse. Now we're dealing with business email compromise, we're dealing with ransomware. And that's when I kind of hit a breaking point, because I realized that a majority of the victimizations that I dealt with could have been prevented. And I tried to go out and I tried to interview people, provide free presentations when I was with the FBI. Mark, I never turned down an opportunity to talk. And a lot of the companies turned me down, and they said this one thing. And I want to ask you in law enforcement today, how does this hold out? Why would anybody want to target me? I don't fit the victim profile. Is that something that's still common today?
Yeah, everyone always has why me, or how this happened to me, or they couldn't believe it was them that it happened to. And I think one of the other big concepts I see is people don't understand that it could be someone that they've never met that's done this. I think that's one of the big misconceptions I talk to when I talk to a lot of people who've been victimized, is they think it's someone they know. And they think, oh, well, it was this person who I know I gave my ID to on this date and time, or it's this person or this business where I use my credit card. And they don't understand that data is the new gold, especially personal information. And that information is available everywhere on the internet nowadays. And you figure someone from overseas in some other place gets a hold of that information in some, database or some data breach that occurred. They contact them and say, hey, how they know my name, date of birth, and social security number? That's probably my biggest question I get all the time. Like, they knew everything about me. And I go, you give me 5 minutes in Google, I can find out everything they told you to. And that's the biggest shock that most people get.
I get it. I want to ask you another thing, and I say this all the time, and let me know what your thoughts are. There's no such thing as an organization or an individual who doesn't fit a victim profile. I always say the cyber criminals do not care who you are. You could be a large casino in Las Vegas, or you could be someone who's cleaning hotel rooms. Is it true that you think anyone could become a victim of cybercrime?
100%. Even if you're law enforcement, I've seen law enforcement become victims of cyber crimes.
Hey, I'm going to ask you another trick question. I've done presentations to law enforcement. What do you think's the number one scam cops fall for all the time?
The number one scam I think for, okay.
And I'll eliminate it. It's not a romance scam, okay?
No, I don't think it's a romance scam. I think it's the submission scam, the text message scam, where you get the video says, hey, is this you in this video? I think 100% most law enforcement officers will fall for that scam, because everyone thinks like, oh crap, they got me on video doing something crazy, or they're going to try to spin it some kind of way, and they click on a link. And that is probably the easiest way to get the officer to get a malware or some kind of ransomware. I think that one they fall for hands down. You probably got another one, but I think that one hands down.
Yeah, you know what I've seen? Purchasing cars online.
I haven't seen that too many locally.
I've had a dozen victims during my career the first one was 2008, where someone went to, autobuyer.com. They found a car online. They saw the car was located up. I'm in Nashville, located up in Louisville, which is a 3.5-hour drive. The car was $3,000 less in Louisville. So the cyber criminal said to the person, hey, why don't we use escrow.com? Because escrow.com is a legitimate website. And they said, Google it, go to escrow.com and we could set it up. So the agent Googled escrow.com and said, hey, this is okay. So the bad guy sent them a link saying, okay, click on this link and enter in your stuff. And, escrow.com will hold the information, the money, until we do it. But what they didn't see that happen, once they clicked on the link, a piece of malware got on the machine and it kind of redirected them to a phishing web page. And boom, the next thing they know, this person went out, sent their money to, and listen to this, sent the money down to a mule in Florida. The mule in Florida sent the money overseas. When we went to do the investigation and find out where the website was registered, because that's a clue, right? Where is the website?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It was registered in South Korea. So,
Wow.
so let's kind of walk through this. You're on the job today. What are your leads?
Well, the first thing you want to know is, of course, what account did he send the money to? And
No, we
where does he,
interviewed the person who's got the money. With the FBI, we were able to, boom, send a lead. The lead went down to Florida. The FBI agent showed up in Florida, interviewed the guy who got the money, and the guy who got the money said, yeah, I got the money, but I have a work from home job I found on this website, and I'm a money remittance agent. You see how the social engineering works? So now the mule, can we prosecute the mule? The mule doesn't have any money.
No, they're an unwitting participant. I wouldn't go after them, because they don't know. They think they're legitimately working from home. I've actually had cases like that where people are receiving checks in the mail. They think, hey, I'm working from home, and this business sends me the checks to deposit into the account, and I'm just working like a bookkeeper almost. And that's probably what that guy thought. He probably thought he was somewhere in the realm of a bookkeeper where he's just handling payments that come in for whatever they tell him it's for, and he sends it off.
So what would you do? I mean, because this was my frustration, and this is what happened to me every single day when I was an FBI agent. I couldn't get the money back. I couldn't put the bad guy in jail. I had a victim who would go to me like this: you're the FBI. How come you're not doing anything about it? I'll throw another scenario over at you. And this was a typical day in my life. I had a individual who went on LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, he went on Google to find a certificate of deposit because he wanted a little bit more interest rate.
Yeah.
They were paying 5.25% here. This other bank had 6.25%. He went to Google, clicked on the first website, got a bank, looked at it, called them up, and wire transferred $700,000 to this investment advisor. And the investment advisor, all of a sudden he sends the money and the website goes dead, the telephone number goes dead, and we find out that he sent the money to Bank of America. So let me ask you, as a law enforcement officer, Mark, can you just call up Bank of America and say, please give me all of your records?
Yeah, that's how it works. Right? No, but
oh man,
no. Now, can you call a bank to attempt to ask for assistance? Yeah, but you got to send subpoenas and warrants.
Okay,
It's a
subpoena.
process.
Okay, a subpoena, either a local subpoena or which is a grand jury subpoena. If you need a subpoena today, how long could it potentially take you to get your hands on a grand jury subpoena?
Sometimes a day or two. Now, I know that's different for you guys. Like sometimes it takes a day or two because for you, when you're at the federal level, I know there's a lot of red tape. You have to go through the AUSA and some other things just to get that. And this, I think, where those task force are really good because at a local level, I go and say, I need this accounting for this bank. Oh, let me go write the subpoena. I'm going to get it signed by the court, and I'm going to send it off to the banker who'll drop it off at a bank. It may take me, a few days to process to get it to the bank. But
okay, so let's just say it's a few days. Okay, so let's say this victim is victimized on a Monday, realizes it's a fraud on a Friday. You get in touch with them the following Monday, and let's say 12 hours later, you get a subpoena. You drop a subpoena on Bank of America on Tuesday. 9 days later, what do you think's happened to that $700,000?
I think before the person even filed that 5 days, that money's already been transferred and gone
Okay.
somewhere else.
So let's follow the money. So now the money went to Citibank. What do you have to do now? Because now
Now you
we're
have to
following the
subpoena,
money, seven hundred
now you have
thousand.
to subpoena Citibank, and that's what they said. Okay, same process.
Okay.
You have to go through Citibank, and
Okay. So tell me, by the time Citibank gets your information, how long do you think it could take?
the same process, same amount of time it takes from Bank of America. Now, the time that it takes to get back to me depends on how fast they want to operate.
Well, it's not that, because they got a stack of things. They got millions of dollars. So now it goes to two other banks. We're 3 months later, and we lose the money in Georgia, the
At that point,
country of Georgia.
of Georgia,
Can I ask you, how long will it take you to get a subpoena from your assistant district attorney to the country of Georgia?
that's a whole nother question, and that's where we're going. Might want to contact the FBI.
Okay, so let's just say now you contact the FBI, we call our legal attaché in Georgia, and there's no treaty with the country of Georgia.
And that's where it gets difficult, because now you have to sit here and explain to this person, I'm sorry, your money has gone out of the country in my hand, especially from a local jurisdiction.
How many times, how often are you having these conversations? I have these conversations all the time. They haunt me.
Oh, they're consistent. And that's one of the worst things to do, to tell a person, I'm going to do everything I can to get the information in the right hands, because from a local standpoint, my hands are tied.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the hardest thing for someone to say, hey, you're the police department, you're supposed to help me. And I tell them, I want to help you. I want to do everything I can to try to get your money back. But that's not how it works, unfortunately. And then I'll tell them, like, hey, sometimes I have to go through federal means. Maybe you need to contact the FBI, file a report at ic3.gov, and that starts the process. But of course, that's when they call back with questions. Hey, I filed a report with ic3.gov. What do I do now? I'm waiting for a call, I'm waiting for an answer. And they go, the same thing that we have locally. I'm sorry, there's limited resources. You may have only 8 or 9 agents in an office who are looking at dozens and dozens of these cases. And sometimes you have to explain, I understand you lost $700,000. They're dealing with somebody who just lost $300 million, and to try to put in perspective, and I don't want to make you feel bad about it. So, like in that instance, what was your normal response when you had to talk to someone who was doing that?
Let me tell you, when it got to this story, I'm sitting here with the family, and they're like, "You're the FBI. What do you mean you can't do this?" And I wanted to put my arm around the victim and say, well, if you just would have done this, this, and this, you wouldn't have been victimized. But I couldn't do that. And that's what I do today. And that's why, for me, I'm always big in talking about the cyber secure mindset, which is, it's not one and done training. It's having this constant level of awareness to really realize that like 90% of fraud easily could be prevented. That's from my opinion, because I always say there's 10%, and even to this day, sometimes there's some sophisticated things. But if 90% of it could have been prevented, why don't we start that? And, I always like to say that social engineering is the #1 tool in the cyber criminals tool belt. We have phishing emails, and companies say to me all the time, hey, we got great phishing, we got an email protection. But Mark, what percentage of what we're seeing is going through text messages, telephone calls, or social media hijacks? Are you seeing a lot of those?
Percentage wise, if I give you percentage wise, a vast majority of it. I couldn't give you a fair percentage, but I will say more than not is going through those means. Social media is a big one. Instagram and Telegram and WhatsApp are
So it's just, so we can confirm now that it's just, when a company says to you, Mark, I don't need to hear your message. We have an email platform that protects it, and we do regular phishing training. Are you saying that's not enough?
No, it's definitely not enough.
Yeah. Thank you. That's
Yeah,
why
but
we're going to get along so great.
Yeah, it's not just phishing either. It's the phishing and smishing. Like the example I gave earlier. You can have the phishing emails unless you're practicing phishing and smishing phone calls. And now we got AI, and that's a whole new monster. where you do deep fakes and voice cloning. Where I mean, there was the issue that happened, I think, over in Asia, where the guy got scammed. It was the accounts payables manager who got scammed out of $25 million, and he was on a live Zoom call with people he thought worked with him, and he thought he was talking to the CFO, and it was a deep fake call. They talked him into sending over $25 million. So
what do we do? How do we avoid that? Do you tell everyone, turn your head so it can, I mean, that's where the training comes in. And, I always like to say that the amount of knowledge required to pull off a major cyber scam isn't a lot. Wouldn't you agree with that? It does not take a lot of sophistication to hurt someone these days.
no, and I'm seeing the rise of people who aren't really even scammers or hackers or things like that. They're the average street level, criminal that you would see nowadays, but they have this fraud as a service thing now. So where you can pretty much pay someone to buy ransomware or buy malware or buy a check. You don't even have to go steal the check or credit card yourself. Somebody else does it and they sell it to you for pennies on a dollar to go be able to go use it. And they're using it as a business model, saying, hey, I'll go steal all these checks out of the mail for you. You just, here you go, pay me $100 and here's a good valid check number. And now you go and spend it, and hey, my hands are free now, and you're the one who actually went out and spent it. So that girl was like, I got my money, you're good to go. And they go from there now.
Let's pretend for a second we have a time machine. Let's just say we can go back in time and sit with victims before they were victimized. What would you tell them? Let me tell you my couple of points that I always say, that if you give me a victim, social engineering, #1 tool in the cyber criminals tool belt. Be aware of it. Understand that all a cyber criminal needs to steal from you is your username and password. That's why they're using social engineering. Never use the same password for multiple platforms, because once the bad guys steal one password, they get into it. And always use two-factor authentication on every bit of remote access, and make sure you're educating your kids and your parents on the different types of scams. If I could package that information up and give it to my victims, I think I could have prevented a lot of cybercrime. What am I leaving out over there? What would you add to that?
There's two other things that I normally tell them. So everything you said was great. I tell them all those things. But there's two other things I always add in. One, make sure to check their credit reports. That's one of the biggest things I see with victims is they always wonder, well, how did this happen? And go, how did you check your credit report? And they go check it, and they're like 20 more accounts that they don't know about. So they don't put a freeze on their credit report, just monitor it. I think now you can check it weekly for free.
Freeze. And what you say, if you freeze your credit, you're not even going to have to really worry about your credit report as much, right?
No, you're not. And it's free. It's a free service.
Okay, so freeze your credit. Very, very important. What else?
And the other thing is set up alerts, set up monitoring alerts for your bank accounts. Because one of the biggest things I see are these smishing or these text message attacks that say, hey, you have fraud in your account, and everyone believes it. Not everyone, but the people who fall for it believe it. But if you have alerts set up already on your device, on your computer, on your phone for your bank accounts, you know when a transaction happens. I can tell you right now, I have bank alerts set up on all my accounts. And I know every time I make a transaction, I get an immediate notification that says, hey, you made a payment here or there. And so when most people see those notifications, they wonder, oh wait, that never happened. I never got an alert. There must be fraud. I didn't know about it. And they go check their account or they click the link, and now there's a fake website where they're entering username and password, like you said. And now that criminal has what you said, their username and password, and they can commit all the fraud on that account they want to.
Wow, that is awesome. And thank you. And if anyone has listened to this long enough, I'm going to throw a little Easter egg in over here. If you reach out to me through the chat thing, I'm going to send you the audio copy of my book. If you're looking to read a good book by a law enforcement officer who saved the day, put a lot of bad guys in jail, and who's really technically smart, you're going to have to wait for Marc to write a book, because that's not what my book is about. My book is what I've learned during my decades with the FBI. It's called The Secret to Cybersecurity. And Marc, when I wrote the book, I called it The Secret. I didn't really have a good title, but you know what I really determined the secret is? Most cybercrime victimizations could have been prevented if my end users were only armed with a few key pieces of knowledge. I want to thank my good friends at PCmatic for bringing this to everyone out here. So Mark, we talked about your role in law enforcement. Give me a little bit of a highlight on what you're doing with Fraud Hero and how people can get in touch with you and what services you provide.
So one of the things that we're doing with Fraud Hero, and you can go to fraudhero.com if you have any questions and reach out to me there. And I'll give some more information in just a bit. But what we do with Fraud Hero is we saw there was a gap between law enforcement, judicial services, and businesses to where the information that one service gets, the other one doesn't get, or the training that one has, the other one's not getting. So what we want to do is give these law enforcement agencies the training that they need when they come across these fraud cases. The same thing with judicial services, with DAs and attorneys. We want to be able to give them the tools of when they're prosecuting these cases to understand the crime at hand, and so they can really go forward and give their best foot forward when they're presenting these cases to juries and judges. And then with businesses, they're targeted all the time. It doesn't matter what kind of business you are, small business, large business. We want to be able to give that business the tools and training that their employees need in order to prevent themselves from becoming the victim of crime. So if you do want to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn under my name. It's Marc Evans, LinkedIn, Marc Evans LV, if you need to, or you can reach me at fraudhero.com. Go to the website, you can reach me there as well.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mark. And another big shout out to my friends with PCmatic, American-made application, allow listing, antivirus. I use it on my home computer, and I tell all my friends to do it too.